He was called a bully, a brute, and the most miserable man to wrestle. But Billy Robinson said they were all just soft, and that's why a lot of wrestlers flat out hated working with him. But the reason wasn't as simple. He wasn't hated because he was bad in the ring. Quite the opposite. He was so good and so committed to wrestling being real that many wrestlers found him impossible to deal with. Some say he was tough but fair. Others say he was a bully who liked to hurt people. The truth is what you're about to find out. Billy was born William Alfred Robinson on September 18, 1938 in Manchester, England. As a kid, he dreamed about being a boxer, but when he was around 14 years old, something happened that changed his life. While playing with other kids, he got hit in the eye by either a Coca-Cola box or a metal sign. It sliced his retina and left him unable to box. Wrestling, though, was still possible. And not just any wrestling. He ended up at the most feared wrestling gym in England, Billy Riley's famous Snake Pit in Wigan. This was not a friendly training environment. The place was bare bones, cold, dirty, no comfort at all. Training there was brutal. Riley had no patience for anyone who showed weakness. If you were slow, if you complained, if you couldn't handle the pain, you were out. Billy spent 8 years in that room. 8 years of being stretched, slammed, and pushed to his limit. That kind of training shaped him forever. He became hard, both physically and mentally. He believed in wrestling as a fight, not an act. That made him a nightmare for anyone who came into the ring expecting an easy night. In 1969, Billy went to Canada to work for Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling. The next year, he joined Vern Gagne's American Wrestling Association. He stayed there until retiring in 1988. After that, he didn't walk away from wrestling. He started coaching. His students included Kazushi Sakuraba, Josh Barnett, Marty Jones, and Johnny Saint, all of whom became stars in wrestling or MMA. His influence spread far beyond his own matches. But here's where his reputation gets tricky. Billy wrestled the same way he trained, stiff, snug, and real. If you were in the ring with him, you were going to feel it. He didn't believe in pulling moves or making things easy. To him, if a hold didn't hurt at least a little, it didn't look real. Many wrestlers hated this. They were used to the style where safety and performance came first. Billy's style meant sore ribs, twisted joints, and sometimes worse. He was known for bullying people. If he thought you were lazy, sloppy, or disrespectful to wrestling, he'd crank a hold tighter or hit you harder. Some saw this as him protecting the business. When it comes to Billy Robinson, one of the most famous stories people love to tell is about his fight with Peter Maivia. You might know Peter as the High Chief, a Samoan wrestling legend and the grandfather of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. Peter Maivia had a reputation. In the ring, he was respected, but outside of it, he could get wild, especially when he had been drinking. He was the kind of guy you didn't want to provoke when he was in a bad mood. Billy Robinson had a reputation too, but for something different. He was one of the toughest men in wrestling, a master of catch wrestling, a real grappler who could take anyone apart if he needed to. So you can see why this story is so famous. Two men who were both dangerous in different ways, ending up in the same place at the wrong time. The Rock has told his version of the fight in interviews. In his version, Peter Maivia pulled Billy Robinson's eye out and threw him through a restaurant window. It's the kind of story you never forget once you hear it. The problem is, Billy Robinson said that version was total nonsense. His exact words were that it was bullshit. Other people who were there agreed with him. This is how wrestling works sometimes. There's a tradition called kayfabe, where you treat the made-up drama like it's real. And even outside the ring, wrestlers will sometimes keep telling stories the same way. The fight becomes a bigger legend every time it's told. Whether the details are true or not almost doesn't matter. The story takes on a life of its own. So what really happened? In Billy Robinson's own book, he says the fight happened in Japan. They were in a restaurant. Peter Maivia had been drinking heavily and started to get aggressive. Robinson stepped in, probably thinking he could calm him down. That's when Maivia bit him hard on the face or neck. The bite was so deep that Robinson had scars from it for the rest of his life. Billy Robinson was tough, but that bite was too much. In his mind, a bite like that wasn't just an attack, it was an attempt to kill him. He reacted instantly. He hit Maivia several times and put him down. Robinson says the whole thing lasted about 15 seconds. By the end, Maivia had a broken nose and 2 black eyes. Robinson had to go to the hospital for stitches and a shot to stop any infection from the human bite. The next morning, Robinson saw Maivia again. This time he was sober. Robinson said Maivia backed down right away. There are other versions of this fight. Wrestler Pat Barrett said Maivia punched Robinson through a window before biting him. George Gordienko said Maivia started the fight by throwing punches too. Superstar Billy Graham went even further, saying Maivia was eating him through his t-shirt with blood everywhere and chunks of skin hanging out. And there's another myth about this fight that needs clearing up. Some people say it's how Billy Robinson got his crooked eye. That's not true. Robinson explained that the eye injury happened when he was a kid, maybe 14 years old, when a Coca-Cola box or a metal sign sliced his retina. That's what stopped him from becoming a boxer and pushed him toward wrestling in the first place. No matter which version of the fight you believe, one thing is certain. This story made Billy Robinson's reputation even bigger. People already knew he was dangerous. This just proved it to them in a way they'd never forget. Then there's superstar Billy Graham's story about Robinson. Graham was one of the most charismatic wrestlers of his time. He had the look, the muscles, the clothes, the sunglasses, and the gift of gab. But in his 2006 book Tangled Ropes, he had some strong words for Billy Robinson. Graham said Robinson was a bully in the ring, that he took liberties with less experienced wrestlers and roughed them up on purpose, that he didn't like guys from bodybuilding or football backgrounds and went out of his way to hurt them. Graham called him an old school shooter, which in wrestling means someone who can and will wrestle for real if they feel like it. Then comes the part that really jumps out. Graham claimed that when they were in Stampede Wrestling together, he taped razor blades to his hands backstage. He said he told Robinson, "If you try to shoot on me, I'll shred you from your face to your toes." It's a shocking image, the kind of detail that makes people lean forward and listen. But here's the problem. Graham admitted in his own book that he has made up serious stories before for personal gain. He said he lied to federal prosecutors about Vince McMahon. He said he invented child abuse claims against WWF officials to try to get hush money. He even called it the most shameful thing he had ever done. If someone is willing to make up something that extreme, you have to be careful about believing every story they tell about someone else. Maybe it happened, maybe it didn't. No one else has confirmed it. The point is that these stories, whether they're true, half true, or just made up, all add to the same image of Billy Robinson. The fight with Peter Maivia, the razor blade threat from Billy Graham, they all make him sound like a man you didn't want to mess with under any circumstances. Billy Robinson's name carried weight not just in the ring, but in the gym. As a coach, people either respected him deeply or thought he was the biggest bully in the business. There didn't seem to be much middle ground. Plenty of wrestlers have said Robinson could be rough. Greg Gagne talked about it more than once. On forums and in summaries of his book, people describe him as the biggest bully they had ever met. It wasn't just one or two stories passed around over the years. It was a pattern. But if you asked Robinson, he would tell you they were wrong. He didn't see himself that way at all. In his mind, he was a teacher. He believed his job was to pass on the real way to wrestle, not to hurt anyone for the sake of it. He talked about proper technique, mat training, and learning how to win a real fight. He said he hated bullies, even going off on long rants about how cowardly they were and how they always backed down when challenged. The strange thing is that in his own book, he told stories that make the picture more complicated. One story was about Karl Gotch, another legendary wrestler, telling him he needed to hurt one of his students to get them in line. Robinson refused at first. He said it wasn't his job to injure people. But a week later, after an argument with his wife, he showed up to the gym in a bad mood. One of the young Japanese wrestlers mouthed off to him. Robinson lined up the students and wrestled them one after another. By the end, one had a broken arm. He called it an accident, but he also said that after it happened, the students treated him with more respect and took training more seriously. That one incident sums up the contradiction. Robinson didn't think he was a bully, but his style of training, forged in the brutal snake pit under Billy Riley, was intense enough to cross the line into injury. To him, it was just part of learning. To others, it was way too far. Wrestling had changed by the time Robinson became a coach. The younger generation wasn't used to that kind of hard training. His way of doing things could feel outdated or even dangerous. That gap in expectations is part of why the bully label stuck. And this wasn't just about his work as a coach. Inside the ring, Robinson had a reputation for being stiff and unwilling to compromise. In wrestling, a stiff worker is someone who hits hard and applies holds for real instead of making them look painful without actually causing harm. Robinson was a shooter, which meant he could win a match for real if he wanted to. That kind of skill made him dangerous, but it also made him a difficult opponent for anyone who didn't share his approach. When he arrived in North America and joined Vern Gagne's American Wrestling Association, it seemed like the perfect match. The AWA valued legitimate wrestlers, and Robinson was about as real as they came. He quickly racked up championships, winning the AWA British Empire Heavyweight title 3 times and the World Tag Team titles twice. He even starred with Gagne in the 1974 movie The Wrestler. His technical skills allowed him to wrestle world champions like Dory Funk Jr. and Vern Gagne to draws, and he went 60 minutes with Bob Backlund while Backlund held the WWF title. But even with those achievements, Robinson never reached the top level in the AWA. Some said it was because of wrestling politics. Others believed it was because he was hard to work with. Greg Gagne recalled that Ray Stevens, one of the best performers of the era, didn't like wrestling Robinson because Robinson wouldn't adapt. He stuck to his style and didn't blend it with Stevens' way of working. Then there was the infamous match in Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling. Robinson was facing Archie Gouldie, the champion at the time. Midway through, Gouldie left the match, went to Hart, and quit. His complaint was that Robinson wouldn't sell for him, wouldn't make Gouldie's moves look convincing, and roughed him up too much. The result was that Robinson ended up with the title simply because Gouldie refused to get back in the ring. Stories like that cemented Robinson's reputation. In Japan, his refusal to compromise made him a legend. Fans there respected the idea of a wrestler who was as real as possible. But in the United States during the 1980s, wrestling was heading in a different direction. Vince McMahon's WWF was becoming more about characters, spectacle, and entertainment than about pure athletic competition. In that world, you had to sell your opponent's offense and tell a story in the ring. Robinson wasn't interested in changing who he was to fit that model. The AWA, for a time, stood against that trend. They kept pushing legitimate wrestling. But when Hulk Hogan left for the WWF, it was clear the business was changing. The glitz and larger-than-life personalities of the WWF were taking over. The AWA's old-school approach was being left behind. Robinson's style, once an asset, became a roadblock to bigger opportunities. It was the same story in Britain. Promoters liked the credibility he brought to the sport, but they didn't build him up as the star he could have been. His authenticity was both his greatest strength and his biggest obstacle. That's why Robinson's legacy is such a mixed picture. As a coach, he produced top fighters and wrestlers. As a competitor, he earned the respect of the toughest men in the sport. But his unwillingness to adapt, whether in training or in the ring, meant that not everyone saw him as a hero. For some, he was a mentor who pushed them to be their best. For others, he was the man who took things too far. Many wrestlers who disliked working with Billy Robinson had different reasons. Some clashed with his personality, others with his style, and some just weren't ready for the toughness he brought to the ring and the gym. That toughness came from his start in the snake pit, where wrestling was about survival and real skill, not performance. Robinson carried that approach for life. He saw wrestling as a fight first. His holds were real, his training was intense, and he didn't water down his style to make opponents look good. That earned him respect from purists, but also a reputation for being hard to work with. As a coach, he denied being a bully, but his old-school, hands-on methods sometimes left students hurt, which only reinforced that image for some. In an era where wrestling was shifting toward entertainment, Robinson stayed committed to authenticity. That limited his mainstream opportunities, but his influence was huge. He helped spread catch wrestling, shape Japanese shoot style, and trained fighters who became legends in wrestling and MMA. Billy Robinson stayed true to himself, even when it cost him. For some, he was too tough. For others, he was unforgettable. His legacy stands as a reminder of the real side of professional wrestling, If you enjoyed this story, give it a like and hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more wrestling history like this. And don't forget to turn on the bell so you'll know when the next video drops. I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you think Billy Robinson was really a bully, or was he just an old school coach who played by tougher rules? Let's talk about it down there.